Good afternoon, patrons, and welcome to the August, 2017 Patroncast. This is all done intentionally. This is all 100% intentional. I actually quite like doing them quite late. This one actually, I think about half the time zones in the world were in September when even the flipping announce went out, because just by the way the weeks fell, it just happened that the time I put the announce out was right at the end of August, or kind of beginning of September, if you were like in, I think anything from Central Europe to the east of there, it was already September when the August submission thread went out. If you were, however, to the west of that, then you were still okay. It did actually go out in August, so that was marvellous. But I like doing it like that, because that means I can actually say how the entirety of August went, because there's a little bit of latency in data in YouTube Analytics, so I don't see the full data for August until, I think it's about, normally the morning of September the 2nd UK time is just about fine for that. Then I kind of get the full date, so I can actually tell you how August went, which is actually very, very well indeed. August has been not quite the best month ever, but kind of the best month ever. You see, in August we got, what is it here? Hang on, I've got the exact number here. 5,323,408 views, to be absolutely precise, according to YouTube Analytics. Now, that is not the highest ever number of views we've got on the channel before in a single month. Technically, August 2016 is higher, at 5.9 million. But the only reason that happened was because that was the month we put out the Fallout New Vegas Choose Your Own Apocalypse, where basically every person who watched it, like, you know, kept going through it over and over and over again. So, like, you know, an average go through was like at least 15 clicks, and several people did like multiple view throughs. So as a result, like, that might be 50 views a person, so it didn't really count. If we kind of remove those views, then that month was more like, I don't know, probably about 3.5 million, rather than kind of that single video, or rather the series of videos, because I think there were about 90 pages to that Choose Your Own Adventure novel. That kind of basically nearly doubled it from about, just under 3.5 million up to about 6 million. So if we exclude that, actually, in all fairness, this has happened twice in a row now, because July was the best ever month too. Excluding the Choose Your Own Apocalypse stuff, at 4.9 million, and we've actually broken the 5 million boundary, which is great. Yeah, August has just been really good. Also, loads of subs. We got over 10,000 subs in a month, which is pretty high. Again, not the highest we've ever had, but the thing is, previous really big months have normally been like, you know, when we've just finished like a major Fallout challenge run and we got a load of press coverage. That's the only time we've ever hit like 15 or 20,000 in a month. If we basically exclude the bumps from press coverage, then also August was the best ever sub gain month we've ever had in the history of the channel, where we gained about like just over 10,000 new subs, actually, just kind of in a single month, which is really, really damn good, because that's all stuff that's coming in organically rather than because of, like, you know, an external factor, which is really, really nice. It's actually, the month actually started really badly, because, like, the very first thing that kind of came out that was a big thing that I was doing in the month was starting on August the 2nd, I did Tacoma. Tacoma did awfully. I wasn't expecting it to do great, but I was expecting it to do better than it did. But, like, very few people watched the first part, and then I thought, oh no, I've already recorded parts 2, 3, and 4. This isn't going to go well at all. So that got very, very few views. So that did not go great. But then Until Dawn happened. Until Dawn was spectacular. I loved Until Dawn. Until Dawn got loads of views, and people really enjoyed the series until the final part, where unfortunately I kind of really underestimated how seriously some people were taking Until Dawn. I thought it was like, you know, silly and B-movie and schlocky, so it was okay for me to just kind of mess around, but no, people were not entertained with the fact that the ending I choose basically meant, what was his name? I've forgotten the bloody names of the characters now. The annoying guy who I hated. Mike! That's it, Mike. That Mike died. Though I stand by that decision, I did not actually just sacrifice Mike just because I wanted to sacrifice Mike. Like, the choice I had was, hey, Mike's in trouble. Sam, you could run over and try and help Mike, or you could just try and flee. It's like, okay, we know for a fact these things can take shotguns to the face, and it barely even slows them down, and Sam is completely unarmed. What is she going to do to help Mike other than wave her arms around and basically draw their attention so Mike can escape? I thought I was being given the choice of either save Mike or save Sam. And in that situation, I chose to save Sam. What I didn't realise was if Sam had gone over there, apparently she would have been able to somehow save Mike, and both of them could have got out. But I didn't realise that was going to be the case. And that also would have saved Emily, who I didn't realise was also still in the room at the time, but never mind. Also, there was the problem of Ashley, which I didn't mean for Ashley to die. I just genuinely assumed that, like, maybe there's a chance that, like, one out of Hannah and Beth, or maybe Jessica, might have still been alive, and I could have rescued, like, one of them. Because I know it said in the book, oh, they can mimic humans, but I thought it meant, like, physically mimic humans. It was, like, the thing. I didn't realise it meant, like, mimic the voices of humans, because we never saw the monsters mimicking the voices of humans. Basically, that's my excuse. I just want to quickly give my excuses for why the end of Until Dawn went how it did. But I realised as soon as she said, oh yeah, I was given the option in a horror film to either separate off and go out on my own chasing a mysterious noise or rejoin the group. And yeah, it's a horror film, I really should have rejoined the group. But I just thought there might be an opportunity to save an extra person. Instead, I sacrificed an extra person. So that was very, very sad indeed. And then there was a load of other good stuff as well. We kind of got the little, not really kind of exclusive, but we got hold of the Total War Warhammer stuff really early. The Game of Thrones stuff, that didn't go too great. Like, I think people really liked the first part, but like the second part dropped so many views, it would be enough I wouldn't kind of do the rest of the series. But actually, in all fairness, like, the same sort of thing vaguely happened with Life is Strange and any of the Telltale stuff I do. Like, the Telltale stuff, like, doesn't really seem to do that great. Life is Strange does a little bit better, which is interesting, but for some reason, like, when I do Telltale stuff, like, the views tend to drop off really quickly. We just don't have the right audience for Telltale stuff, so I should probably just learn that lesson and just not do Telltale stuff anymore. So Game of Thrones won't be back. I kind of had fun playing around with that, but I think the joke, there's kind of, you know, the core of it was I have no idea what's going on and thus make stupid decisions, and thus, like, you know, I had no idea that Ramsay Snow wasn't to be trusted. I assumed Ramsay Snow would be a fair and even-handed negotiator. I didn't realise he was going to come and just stab me in the neck and, you know, steal all my stuff and wreck all my stuff and steal my sister or whatever. I didn't realise any of that was going to happen. So that's unfortunate because I didn't know Ramsay Snow was a notorious bastard. I told Claire about it and she laughed in my face after I told her what had happened, so that was good. And other than that, just a bunch of good stuff too. We've had... I mean, the views have been partly revitalised because obviously Fallout 1 went okay, but by the end it was a little bit disappointing for Fallout. Like, clearly, like, you know, the old style stuff. There was a lot of interest at the beginning, but it dropped off quite a lot by the end. So I'm kind of glad that was only like a 20-odd part series. Now we're back into New Vegas and there's a lot more interest going on. A lot of people really, really liking that. So good that New Vegas is back. All sorts of exciting stuff, like good one-offs, Papers, Please, etc. Yeah, just generally I think there's been a really good selection of videos in August, which is really, really cool indeed. And I kind of tried to learn from that, because just in the way that, like, you know, we did the Until Dawn miniseries, I want, like, at least one of those, like, a well-known and well-regarded classic game as a miniseries. I'd like at least one of those a month, and that's kind of why we started off with The Witcher in September, also kind of conveniently syncing up with the 10th anniversary of The Witcher itself. We actually do The Witcher. So that's kind of happening right now. By the time you hear this, I think it'll have been I think you'll have had the first 2 parts, and the third one will be coming tonight, or depending on when Claire edits this, might possibly be you'll already have the 3 parts, and the 4th one will be coming tonight. But yeah, we're doing a little Witcher mini-series at the moment. That's been going really well. That got way more views. Like, excluding Total War and Fallout, that's like pretty much the best opening to a series, albeit a mini-series, we've ever had. So that was really, really impressive. So I've already started looking at, like, other stuff we can do that's sort of similar. The one that I've actually already kind of paid some attention to is Dead Space. I've always liked Dead Space as an aesthetic. I've never played it before, but, like, I'm aware of it, and I've kind of absorbed some knowledge of it by osmosis. So going back and looking at the original Dead Space, and obviously we'll definitely look at Witcher 2. Now Witcher 1's done so well, we'll definitely go forward and look at Witcher 2 at some point to continue kind of working our way through that sort of thing. And I'll kind of try and find something a bit more like Until Dawn as well. But basically, I want at least once a month to do, like, a little mini-series like that, because that did very, very nicely indeed. That's done really, really well. So we kind of want to do some of that. We've got some really cool stuff coming up in September as well. So I don't want to spoil it, but a couple of things coming back. A couple of things coming back in some capacity in a new way, and I think you're going to like it. And the streaming's been going really well. The streams make a huge difference as well, because Super Chat donations have been really generous. That is more than I was originally expecting. So that's made, you know, a really good difference, because I'm just going to give you a context for what's going on, like, you know, just to give you a flavour for how YouTube and the adpocalypse, what it really means. Back in August 2016, we got, I think it's about 3.4 million views. 3.4 million views in August 2016. And in August 2017, like I just said, we were up to 5.2 8.3 million views. So, like, you know, 50% up or something, about 50% up, give or take. And over the same period, comparing August 2016 to August 2017, the amount of ad revenue that the channel generated fell by about 15%. So views up 50%, ad revenue down 15%. And yeah, it's really weird right now. The situation on YouTube, it's really weird because I've never seen so many big, prominent YouTubers, like, all fairly united on Twitter, being utterly scathing towards YouTube, and so many of them saying, hey, we're going to do less YouTube and more Twitch going forward because it doesn't make sense for us to do YouTube anymore. And YouTube doesn't seem to be treating this as a crisis. Like, I'm not seeing any emergency moves to reassure or fix this coming from YouTube whatsoever. They just seem to be, you know, sticking their heads in the sand and doing stupid stuff like redesigning the UI so it looks worse. I mean, I like the night mode. I do like the night mode, I'll admit. The night mode is nice, but it wasn't enough for me to not immediately switch YouTube back to old YouTube mode, so we're just going to stick with that for the time being. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because the way it all works in YouTube is basically January has always been terrible and February's been pretty bad. And then, like, you know, March to August is okay. This is for gaming YouTube specifically, by the way. And then because there's loads of new games and, like, advertisers want to advertise more, in September through to December, like, the CPMs go up and thus people make decent money in September through to December. And that offsets really poor January, February time and just okay-ish earnings in March to August. Like, the September to December period is supposed to pay for the rest of the year because ad revenue income is really, really inconsistent. So we don't know whether that's going to happen this year. We've no clue, because after the apocalypse happened, it hit our channel in April 2017. Like, we made less ad revenue in April than we made in January. And that's not supposed to happen. January is supposed to be the absolute rock bottom from which you recover thereafter. And I think actually in August we made less ad revenue than we did back in January. That's ridiculous. August is supposed to be an okay month. That's supposed to be the beginning of the recovery months. But the ad revenue was lower than January, which makes no sense. So views are up and it's supposed to be a better time of year. Ad revenue's still down. That's why Patreon's important, because for people who have not got a good alternative way of funding themselves, whether that be sponsored content of some description or, you know, lots of regular streaming on Twitch where they get loads of donations, or Patreon or something. For those people who don't have that, for people who are still reliant on YouTube ad revenue, if the situation does not improve in the September to December period, I would fully anticipate seeing over the next 4 to 6 months quite a few YouTubers just packing it in and saying this isn't working for us anymore, the financials of it just don't stack up, I'm going to go and do something else. And potentially I think there might be quite a big exodus from YouTube over to Twitch, and I don't know what YouTube's planning to do about it. I honestly don't know. So, odd times to live in. I've never seen the community so united and angry against YouTube. So many YouTubers are so angry right now, genuinely hating what YouTube are doing, so it'll be very interesting to watch. Very, very interesting to watch indeed. Still, let's get on with the questions, because I think there's 133 of the bastards, so this might take a while. Let's start from the oldest first, why don't we? What are my thoughts on the Creation Club? The Creation Club. I was about to say interesting, because that's sort of a thing I just put at the beginning of sentences, but no, it's not actually interesting. It's the opposite of interesting. It's incredibly boring. I mean, I can see why some people are angry about it. I can't be bothered to get angry about it, because it's just... If the word blur needed a definition, this is what the Creation Club pretty much is. It's just boring. Like, I see why some people are angry, because they specifically said, hey, this is going to be like mini DLCs, that's why it's okay for us to charge money for them, and something. And it's definitely not paid mods. No, it's like mini DLCs. And as it turns out, all 12 of the things on the shop at the beginning are literally mods that are available for free elsewhere. You're just paying for something you can literally download for free, and also the versions you can download for free are often superior. Like the free version of the Hellfire armor you can just get for free, to my mind, and I think a lot of people agree, looks better than the version you actually have to pay for. And they are rather expensive for just, like, you know, paint jobs and reskins and stuff, which is what a fair whack of it is. So it's just really dull. It's just totally uninteresting. I wouldn't recommend going and taking advantage of it at the time being. I mean, it's something that really divides me. Like, I'm not opposed to the idea because, you know, as somebody who creates content that is available online for a living, you know, I do have a lot of sympathy for the idea that, hey, modders do probably quite a lot of work. I mean, I'm not a modder. I'm not saying I'm doubting they do. I'm just saying, as I'm not a modder, I don't know how much work goes into a mod of varying levels of complexity. So, as someone who puts content online for a living myself, I have a lot of sympathy for the idea that modders, who presumably do quite a lot of work a lot of the time, deserve to potentially get paid for their work. And if there was a formal shop which would allow, you know, modders to get a fair cut of income from purchased mods, I wouldn't object to that. And I don't know. I mean, it's not an economy I know enough about to really discuss in great detail, because I think I saw Jim Sterling talking about this in detail, and his take on it was like, a lot of people who are both modders and also those who are long-term connoisseurs of mods, for them the economy works a lot more about donations, and people do choose to donate to modders, and that's how the system's always worked, and Bethesda's kind of attempt to shuffle their nose into it isn't really that welcome. So I'm kind of divided on it. Like, conceptually I like it, but the way they've executed it pretty much couldn't have been worse or more boring. So, yeah, my answer is bleh. Favourite character moment in the Mass Effect series? Oh, that's easy. Garrus the bottle shooter in Mass Effect 3. Oh, Garrus the bottle shooter. Mass Effect 3 gets a lot of flack for having a dodgy ending, albeit one that was improved, but it still remains a bit dodgy even after it was improved. But it had some lovely character moments. It had some really sweet character moments, and very sad moments, some very poignant and moving deaths, some very sweet moments when characters were reuniting or saying goodbye, or right before the ending where it all went a bit wrong. There's a lot of really, really good character moments, like, say, Shepard and Tali, because my first playthrough was Shep, who was romancing Tali. Shepard and Tali's kind of final moment saying goodbye before the final big charge that kicks off the dubious end sequence is very sweet and very, very moving. And Shepard and Tali and Legion on Rannoch at the end of Rannoch, even if you do everything right and you get the really good Rannoch ending, which I did, then that's very, very sweet indeed. And Garrus the bottle shooter is just a lovely, light moment. Mass Effect 3 had, like, some of the best little moments in the entire franchise, but it kind of gets forgotten just because, yeah, the ending was a bit dodgy. But other than that, it's a really damn good game. It's a really, really damn good game. Any plans of doing online play sessions with fans on consoles like Xbox One or PS4? Yes, I am thinking quite possibly the next one will be PS4 and would be PlanetSide 2. At some point. I don't know exactly when. I've got a vague idea in mind. I want to do a big multiplayer Just Cause 3, that will be PC, or maybe PlanetSide 2 on PS4 that I've just got. I'm not sure what I'd do on Xbox One. I do actually own Overwatch on Xbox One. I could just do an Overwatch thing, but then that would be fewer people would be able to play. But those are all options. I may try and mix a bit more of that in going forward. We're just kind of, yeah, we're pretty much at capacity at the minute. Like, with the fact that we're putting out somewhere in the range of 13 videos a week, and now we're live streaming on a regular basis too, and there's a bunch of other little bits and pieces happening in the background, it's kind of difficult for us to squeeze in the play sessions as well, but I do want to kind of try and rejig things around a bit to make a bit more space for those to become more of a regular thing. I don't know, like, maybe like monthly or something? I'm genuinely not sure. I think it will kind of, maybe that'll wait for the new year, because we're kind of, and now we're in September, we're going to be into the great big everyone releases the game moment that kind of kicks off between September and the end of November. So maybe we'll kind of hold off on that for now, but possibly. I genuinely don't know what the next Playday is going to be. Do you have any plans to do a challenge run in Fallout 1 or 2? Honestly, no. Fallout 1 was, as I say, it did okay, but it didn't do great in terms of views, so we probably won't see that back again, because a challenge run for it now, it's already been seen once. Like, the people who just wanted to see Fallout 1 because they've never seen it before, because, like me, their entry into the Fallout franchise was actually with Fallout 3, or maybe Fallout New Vegas, so it was the previous generation, or rather, the generation well after Fallout 1. They probably wouldn't come back for challenge run because they've already seen it now, and I don't know Fallout 1 well enough to do a really interesting challenge run, so probably not. Maybe I'll do something like a little bit different with Fallout 2. Like, we will do Fallout 2 at some point. I just need to figure out what the best way to do it is. In fact, actually, we kind of need to mix up Fallout 2, because Fallout 1 was A little bit disappointing on the view front, and I suspect Fallout 2 would be exactly the same, except Fallout 2, as I understand it, is much, much, much longer than Fallout 1. So if the views are quite disappointing for Fallout 2, that's a series we're kind of stuck with for quite a long time. So maybe I need to find some way of making that a bit more interesting. How is it that in your 2013 channel trailer, there's a bit from Rogue Squadron about the lorries on Yavin 4, but you didn't release that video for 3 years? Ah! Ha ha ha, no, you've made a mistake there. That old little bit of footage that was in the really, really old channel trailer from 2013 was not from Rogue Squadron. It was, in fact, from the first level of Rebel Strike. And I think you also mean Rogue Lead... Wait, hang on, I've never played Rogue Leader on the channel. Maybe you do mean Rogue Squadron. Well, it's definitely not Rogue Squadron anyway. Because Rogue Squadron did have a mission on Yavin, but it looked a lot worse than that. A lot more foggy. No, that's from Rebel Strike, which was a really, really early video in history of this channel where basically I just said why Rebel Strike is one of the worst Star Wars games ever made, which it is. It's utterly, utterly terrible. Though, actually, really fun fact, if you want to see footage that shouldn't be in a trailer, I think in possibly the very first or maybe second trailer we ever made for the channel, so we are talking like 2013 or 2014, there is somewhere in there, or maybe actually it's the preview of upcoming series in 2014, I'm trying to remember where it is. It's somewhere in a preview video somewhere, I can't even remember myself. There is preview footage of me playing The Walking Dead. Now, if you've been paying attention, or rather, even if you have been paying attention, like ever since 2013, we've never done The Walking Dead on the channel. So why is there footage in a preview somewhere of me playing The Walking Dead? Well, that is because I actually recorded myself and Claire playing The Walking Dead episode 1. Now, the idea was I was going to cut it together where, like, it was going to be like, you know, my reaction to stuff and Claire's reaction to stuff and how we reacted to stuff differently. But the problem is, like, I don't think I did a desperately good job with it. I thought I did okay with it, but not great. But then Claire's bit was quite quiet. So, like, when I tried to put it together, it turned out that, like, it was 90% me and only 10% Claire, and it just kind of felt a little bit awkward. So then I tried to, like, vaguely recut it into something that was just me, but then it was kind of too short, and it just, like, never happened. I just never got around to it. And then, in about 2016, I went and I found that footage, and I looked at it, and I realised, like, by the standards of the video we were putting out by that point, it was very poor, which was the recording quality wasn't great, and the audio quality wasn't great, which was my old microphone, and there were lots of really awkward gaps, and basically it was really early work. If you go back and watch the really early videos now, you can tell they're really early. I think some of them hold up pretty well, but, like, you can tell the difference. They are fairly, I would say, objectively worse. The editing is sloppier. The pacing is not as good. Many a True Nerd was not yet Many a True Nerd. I'd say, like, 2014. Was it 2014? Yeah, 2014, when we began Fallout 3 Kill Everything. I think that was when I figured out what Many a True Nerd was and what it should sound like and what the comedy should be like, and everything started fitting together a lot more nicely. That's when I think it all kind of clicked into place a little bit. Though I guess you could argue the same sort of thing happened in, like, the later parts of Fallout New Vegas Kill Everything, the very original series, in, like, late 2013. But I personally think it was 2014 and Fallout 3 Kill Everything where it started fitting together. But yeah, it was just kind of quite poor looking back. So I just shelved it, and now there is just a video of me, or rather there's footage somewhere on a hard drive, of me basically commentating Walking Dead episode 1 that will never see the light of day. Because if I put it out now, it would look scruffy and sound scruffy, and everyone would comment, why is this so bad? So sadly, even though there is actually somewhere preview footage of it still live on the channel, the video it was previewing will never actually exist. Have you or will you play Destiny 2? Unfortunately not. I never played the original Destiny. I don't have a huge amount of interest in online MMOE shootery sort of thing. So honestly, I was just going to give a complete pass to Destiny 2. It just doesn't interest me. And, like, if I tried to play something that didn't interest me, I don't think it does anyone any favours. Because, like, I'm not going to be super enthusiastic about it. It's not going to be that good for people who don't know Destiny 2. And for people who are, like, really into the Destiny franchise, I think I just won't do it justice. So it's almost certainly for the best I don't. Would you consider doing a collaboration with another YouTube channel known for strategy games like Paradox or Total War? To be honest, if I do collaborations coming up, I've got a couple vaguely in mind that I've had some discussions going on already. So collaborations is something I approach very slowly and very cautiously. So I think if I do one, it'll be one that I kind of very slowly work up to. I can't say more at this exact moment in time, or rather I don't want to, because I don't know whether it's going to come off. One thing I'm discussing right now is a pretty well-known podcast. I might be a guest on it at some point. Don't want to say exactly what, but I might be a guest at some point in the future on a pretty well-known podcast. I'm sort of discussing that with the people involved right now. And I will just leave it at that. That's going to be the next vaguely collaborative-y thing we've got going on. And of course, after the Wolf's Bite went very well, I'm going to get Claire back in as well. So we're going to do a little bit of that going forward. I want to get some kind of like friends of the channel in. I'd like to get Matt back in again, because Matt's popular with the community. But absolutely, I will kind of look at some collaborations going forward too. Would you ever consider doing some amount of voice acting work if given the opportunity? You know, I've always thought about it. I don't actually think I would be that great at it, because like the thing about people who are good voice actors is they've got remarkable vocal range. They can do loads of different voices. I think my vocal range, meanwhile, is very limited. So, like, I can only really, like, sing at all well if the song in question has a really limited vocal range and doesn't actually call for much in the way of vocal talent. And I think, like, you know, while from some people's point of view I might have a nice accent or whatever, I don't think there's much variety in my voice. Like, it's something I've vaguely thought about, but I know that, like, next to actual voice actors and voice actresses, and, like, I follow, like, some of them on YouTube. I think, like, sometimes voice actors and actresses do, they have really interesting YouTube channels, they do really interesting stuff. Like, the skill and the talent they have for being able to replicate such radically different voices is incredible. And I have none of that talent whatsoever. If I was ever asked, you know, I'd totally be up for it. Why the hell not? But I doubt I'd really, like, you know, ever be able to, like, make it as a voiceover actor, because the people who are actually successful voiceover actors are much better than me. Will you marry me? Yes. And will you ever do a Final Fantasy VII series? Interesting question, because when the remake came out, I did actually consider it. And it's the sort of thing which I think would make a really fun mini-series. I wouldn't do the whole thing, but just, like, play a bit of it, like, to the end of the first section, or however long that takes. The problem is there's an interesting thing about Square, which is Square Enix is kind of, like, divided into two, which is there's Western Square Enix and there's Japan Square Enix. Western Square Enix are the loveliest bunch of cuddly human beings you'll ever meet. They love YouTubers. They've got a great YouTuber outreach program. They've got dedicated staff whose kind of job it is to liaise with YouTubers and content creators and stuff like that. They're wonderful. I love working with them. It's why you see a lot of Square games on the channel, like when they come out. It's why I pretty much always cover the Square Enix collective stuff, the indie games that are being nurtured and published by Square Enix, just because that stuff tends to be really good and they're very good at kind of letting me know it's happening and stuff. They're just a great bunch of people. Then there's Eastern Square Enix over in Japan. They hate YouTubers. They truly despise YouTube. They are incredibly distrustful of it. They don't like sending out review code. They don't like providing code to anyone, and especially not to YouTubers. And in general, they just don't seem to like the internet very much. And in addition, like a great deal of actually Japan-centered publishers, like say Capcom are guilty of this as well, they are still one of the very few publishers that don't really like YouTube videos existing in their games, and like will issue, they don't issue content takedowns as far as I'm aware, but they do issue content IDs. So what they'll do is they'll basically say either, you know, a video might not be allowed to appear in certain territories, or you can't run any ads on it whatsoever, or various other things. Like, I've been hit by Capcom in the past where I think a certain video wasn't allowed to be viewed in Germany for whatever reason. I think it might be one of the old Resident Evil 6 series. I think you might not be allowed to actually see that in Germany. I think, like, it literally goes to a blank screen if you try and watch it in Germany. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. I think that was Capcom in the Resident Evil 6 series. Basically, Square Enix aren't great to work with when you're a YouTuber if you're dealing with a property that kind of belongs to the eastern side of the business. So it's a bit of a barrier. Though I have considered at some point for maybe a live stream. It might be fun as a live stream thing. So maybe watch this space for that at some point. I might do a Final Fantasy VII live stream and just say, screw it. If it gets like completely shut down and content ID down the line once it actually goes up, then it was a live stream, and live streams kind of, you know, they don't make their money from ads, they make their money from donations, so it honestly doesn't matter. Like, honestly, I've considered also doing, like, Nintendo stuff for a live stream, because, again, it wouldn't matter if Nintendo slapped Content ID on it, and the ads didn't do anything, because at that point, like, it would have made its money through the donation, so that's fine. But there is the slight problem that I kind of don't want to just, like, break my self-imposed embargo of Nintendo games, because I don't want to reward Nintendo, because they're dicks to YouTubers. So I kind of feel like if YouTubers all bound together and basically said we're not covering Nintendo until they stop being dicks, and a lot of YouTubers don't cover Nintendo at all because they're dicks to YouTubers, I think we kind of need to keep that up, because it means at one point, hopefully, they might decide, hey, maybe if we stop being dicks, we get more YouTube coverage, and that'd be nice. Does MTN accept forms of considerations other than monetary? Do you have wish lists on Amazon, etc.? No, actually. No, we don't. And I feel like I'm happy with where we are at the moment. I'm perfectly happy with where we are in terms of, like, the blend of what's left of ad revenue, as poor as that is, and the YouTube Red contribution, which is there and actually embarrassingly close to overtaking ad revenue at this point, which is really embarrassing. Actually, it's really weird. Like, every time I hear another YouTuber talking about Red revenue, they say, like, oh, it's nothing, don't even worry about it. Like, if you're lucky, you get, like, you know, a tiny amount of money per month. It barely even gets noticed. I haven't had that experience. From my experience, Red's actually been really good. But then I suppose, like, I follow a lot of British YouTubers. Like, you know, the people I'm talking about, I seem to recall it was Nerdcubed and Yogscast Hannah that I think I remember making that comment in the past. And I think, like, many British YouTubers have very British audiences. And we don't. We're a British YouTuber that's actually got a predominantly American audience. So I think the issue is, I think in UK you still can't even have Red, or if you can, the penetration is really, really, really low. So as a result, like, if you've got very few American viewers, we've got primarily UK viewers, you'll barely notice anything from Red. But if you've got loads of US viewers, actually Red makes a healthy contribution, which is nice. But anyway, sorry, I'm getting off topic. Yeah, the combination of the whatever's left of ad revenue at this point with Red and the donations from the live streams and the Patreon, like, together, I'm happy with that. I think we're in a good place. I don't feel like I want to open up new things. And I suppose I should also include the merchandise there. But, like, merchandise doesn't really make much money. Merchandise, like, after, you know, the person who's made the merchandise has taken their cut and the cost of the item is reduced, very little's left over. Not a huge amount actually gets shipped. Like, you know, we're talking in, like, the hundreds rather than the thousands of items, like when we're talking about, like, the t-shirts or the mugs. So we're not talking about a huge amount, and once the cost of the item is taken out and all the rest of it, there's not much left over, and it takes a lot of time and effort to organise. Like, Claire spent a lot of time getting the merchandise program up and going, so, like, considering, like, how many hours she needed to put in, merchandising is probably, like, in terms of what I could do with my and Claire's time, how I could distribute hours, and if I was trying to make as much money as possible, merchandising is kind of probably the worst thing I could do with it. There'd be, like, anything I could do else on the channel would make more money than merchandising. Like, probably the best thing I could do would just be live stream more, and this is exactly why I see lots of YouTubers talking about, hey, we should kind of move away from YouTube and towards Twitch. I understand why they're doing it. Like, I understand why that financially is absolutely a thing that they would do. But for us, I think we're okay for the time being. I think we're in good shape. So I don't think we're looking at, like, opening up anything new at the moment. Like, seriously, don't worry about it. If you're on here, you are contributing a huge amount already. Don't worry about an Amazon wish list. Seriously, I promise. In Medieval 2, the Moorish peacekeeping forces, is that something that's actually in the code, or is it just something that happened in the narrative of that specific playthrough? The Moorish peacekeeping forces on Corsica in Medieval 2. What's going on there is basically the Moors have decided they want to take Corsica, but if they land an army that they know can't actually take out the force in the fortress, they'll very often just bum around and not do anything for a while. They might eventually decide they're going to attack the castle. They might just sit there waiting for reinforcements. So they just basically go there and they stand close by to it. But when the Sicilians also arrive, often to the east of the Moors, just because the Moors are coming from the west and the Sicilians are coming from the east, there's only one path around the mountains on Corsica that lets a unit travel from the south coast round to the castle, because the area doesn't like going the long way round. So the Sicilians just get stuck behind the Moors and can't really do anything about it. It's just a weird bug in the AI in Medieval 2. The Moorish peacekeeping forces are definitely not actually peacekeeping forces. They are invasion forces that just aren't sure when they actually want to bother invading. So as a result, the Sicilians get stuck behind them. But I like the fact it happened, because I love just kind of making narratives out of stuff that happens in Total War. It's great fun. Now that The Witcher is happening, can we expect Dragon Age Origins? Oh, no. No. Well, yes, potentially. But the thing is, Dragon Age Origins is a really big undertaking, because it's a huge, huge game. So Possibly, but don't expect it to be a full series. Don't expect it to be a full series. And when you finally get around to doing Knights of the Republic, so I kind of consider this a connected question, that's more likely to happen if I think we can get away with it. Because I don't know how much we can get away with it, because you're playing with Disney Marvel-y properties there, and I don't know whether I want to risk doing a full series that might be covered in content ID or even takedowns. I need to look into it at some point, so I'll have to say about that. What are your thoughts about siding with the dark side in that anyway? I don't know. I will genuinely make my decision based on the information in the game, because one, I've played a tiny bit of Knights of the Republic, I've never really played it properly, so I would entirely base my decision on, like, you know, what happens in the game and what would make sense to me as a character. Have you ever seen the TV show Space? No, I've seen bits of it. But to be honest, like, my thing with liking Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright and Nick Frost, it's more about the Cornetto trilogy. I do like the Cornetto trilogy. That's kind of like the core of it for me. Like, for Edgar Wright, I always think Scott Pilgrim's pretty good. I didn't enjoy Baby Driver much at all. But for me, it's about Hot Fuzz. Hot Fuzz, to my mind, is like the pinnacle of that partnership. John, I'm curious, what are the age demographics for this channel? You know what? Let's find out. I'm going to get that exact information up right now. Though I think this information, by the way, is not always 100% accurate. I think YouTube sometimes makes some assumptions about its demographic information, but you know what? Screw it. Let's give it a go. So, 13 to 17-year-olds, which is the youngest YouTube's willing to acknowledge exists, even though obviously there are younger people floating around, 6% of views for the past, how have I set this? Oh, this is literally all time. Good. This is literally the entirety of the channel. So 6% up to 17 years old. Then the 18 to 24 bracket is 34% of all views of all time. For 25 to 34, it's 42%. 35 to 44, 12%. 45 to 54, 4.3%. 55 to 64, 1%. And 65 plus is 1.6%, which I think is actually pretty darn good. I actually quite like that. 1.6%. So we've had, like, over the entire history of the channel, we've had over 100 million views. So as a result, we've got, like, wow. That means we've had, like, over 1 million views from people over 65. I like that. I like that a lot. How are you and Claire? We're fine, thank you. How's Tabby? She is grumpy. She's grumpy today because she coughed up a hairball yesterday, and she sometimes gets herself a bit full of fluff and has to cough up hairballs, which she does insist on doing, like, on the bed, where it's awful to clean and stuff. And also, she did it right in the middle of Claire being on someone else's podcast, which I thought was hilarious and Claire didn't think was funny at all. But she decided to vomit up, like, literally at the point where Claire was actually doing something where she didn't want to be disturbed. So poor Tabby picked a bad moment to dry heave up a hairball. But what can you do? Cats say. Have you read the Ben Or Diaries on Reddit? I have read. I think I've read all of them. I like those. I like anything that, like, is like a big community effort, because to me it's more important that people care about something enough to produce, like, almost like, it's kind of fan fiction, isn't it? It's kind of like fan fiction and fan art and kind of fan work in general. I just love the existence of fan work because it means someone really cares about something you've made, and that's really, really cool. Have you considered doing more Papers, Please? It has multiple endings. Would be interesting to see which ending you get. I did consider it. In fact, I considered, like, it coming back for a live stream, but I'm not necessarily convinced that's the best way to do it. Because the thing about live streams is, like, I like the live streams to have, like, natural pauses in them, so, you know, we can engage with the chat and stuff like that. Like, Papers, Please is quite an intense game, which requires a lot of focus, and I need to be going as fast as I can, which I don't think suits a live stream format. But as a video, I'm not sure I can really add much more to it at this point. Like, at this point, if I made more of a series, it would just be however many more parts, probably like 3 or 4 more parts of basically the same thing over and over. And I'm not sure how interesting that is. So I've considered it, but I'm just not quite sure. And what's my favourite game of the year so far? Ooh, interesting. Interesting question. Very interesting question. Possibly, ooh, maybe Prey? Prey's pretty darn good. I did really enjoy Prey. Prey was great fun. So, yeah, possibly. But I'll have to see about that. I haven't really decided what my game of the year is going to be yet. In fact, I can't decide that because the games aren't all out yet. John, there is a Fallout board game coming out this year from Fantasy Flight Games. It has hexes. Respond. Yes, I know. I've been on the mailing list since the very first moment it was announced. Please can we have American John recite one of your favourite passages from ancient Greek or Roman literature? No, you can't, because I've got something better for you, which is during the last stream, I couldn't remember the name of one of my favourite vaguely classically themed war poems, and I went and checked afterwards, and it was Patrick Shaw Stewart. So instead, I'm just going to read that for you now instead, because I did actually go and get that up ahead of time. Yes, indeed. Here we go. Diddly, 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 diddly. No, I've got it right in front of me here. There we go. So you're just going to get a good reading of my favourite war poem from World War I instead. I saw a man this morning who did not wish to die. I ask and cannot answer, if otherwise wish I. Fair broke the day this morning upon the Dardanelles. The breeze blew soft, the morn's cheeks were cold as cold seashells. But other shells are waiting across the Aegean Sea, shrapnel and high explosives, shells and hells for me. Oh, hell of ships and cities, hell of men like me. Fatal second Helen, why must I follow thee? Achilles came to Troyland, and I to Chersonese. He turned from wrath to battle, and I from 3 days' peace. Was it so hard, Achilles, so very hard to die? Thou knowest and I know not, so much the happier am I. I will go back this morning, from Imbros o'er the sea. Stand in the trench, Achilles, flame-capped and shout for me. And I quite like that, especially because the end there, stand in the trench, Achilles, flame-capped and shout for me. If Patrick Shaw Stewart is taking the role where Achilles is shouting flame-capped for him, then he's basically playing the role of Patroclus after he's already died. And Patrick Shaw Stewart, who wrote that poem in 1917, did die in 1917. He didn't die in the battle that actually followed him writing this poem. He died in France later the same year, but regardless, it's a poem where he basically foresaw his own death. It's not a poem about him surviving or getting home. It's a poem about how if he dies, he hopes that his body can be recovered and buried. And that is actually what went on to happen to him. He died in France in December of 1917, and his body was indeed buried in a cemetery in France. So it's a very sad poem. But I do rather like it. I'm going to squish the next two questions together because they're kind of the same question, just with a different game, which is someone has asked after XCOM and someone's asked after Mount and Blade. Well, basically, following the success of, say, Until Dawn and The Witcher, and hopefully coming up soon, Dead Space, totally, both Mount and Blade and XCOM are kind of in the list of games that would logically have little kind of week-long mini-series. So yes, fully expect to actually see XCOM and Mount and Blade in the not-too-distant future. And someone else asking after Realpolitik, because yes, indeed, while a fair few people actually kind of enjoyed it, they wouldn't necessarily actually play it themselves. So there might be a bit more interest. You know, I've said before, maybe the moment's kind of gone on that one, because as a game, like, I don't think there's necessarily, well, there's some interesting stuff you can do with it, but I think maybe the moment's past there. Like, we've actually kind of had loads of views on those videos, but I'm not sure there's much more I can do. Like I've said before, I kind of wish I had the guts to do the Islamic State run through of it, but I don't. This would be a terrible idea. That's a really good way to get your channel shut down. Though I did plan out all the puns. Yep, grand finale, Daesh to the finish and everything. Would have been great. But no, I didn't quite have the guts for that one. So I'm not sure what more I can really do for it. Like, okay, fine, I could just take like a little country and try and do some stuff, but I wouldn't really have an end goal to it. I don't really know what I could add at this point. So I feel like I really like the 3-part Realpolitik series I've done. I just don't know if I could really add much to it at this point. Where do you see your channel in 1, 5, and 10, if at all, years' time? Difficult one to answer. Like, I'd like to think that maybe because we're probably going to hit 300,000 subs about the end of September, that I'd love to think maybe by the end of 2018, we could hit 500,000. I'd like to hit 500,000 in 2018. But that's not necessarily going to be the easiest thing to do. Like, I literally just said earlier, like, pretty much the biggest month we've ever had organically on the channel is 10,000 subs a month. Now, even if we hit 10,000 a month every month between now and the end of 2018, we still haven't hit 500,000. So there needs to be like a pretty big step change in how fast we get subs on board for that to happen. But I don't know, maybe we'll find a way to happen to it. Beyond that, I don't really like to plan. Like 5 and 10 years is too far away to to plan something that's online. Like, online sites, like, get born, flourish, and their user base dies in less than 5-10 years. In 5 years' time, the entire ecosystem of the internet and where we all go as standard will have completely changed. Like, I remember a time when the biggest thing on the internet was MSN Messenger, alright? The thing that everyone had was MSN Messenger. MSN Messenger was hugely important. Now it doesn't even exist anymore. It's been shut down entirely. Like, in 5 years' time, who knows what will or won't be around? Will WhatsApp still be around? Will Instagram still be a thing? Will Twitter still be a thing? Like, you just don't know. You just don't know. Some things feel like just because they've got like a critical mass of users, it's going to be harder to kill them. Like Facebook, for example. Facebook will be quite flipping hard to kill at this point. But we'll have to see. I think honestly 5 and 10 years is too far ahead to be planning a YouTube channel. Have you ever listened to the History of Rome podcast? I have not actually, but I've certainly added it to a list of things to potentially check out in future, because that sounds very much like my sort of thing. John, what's your favourite FTL ship? Oh, it's one of the Mantis ones. I think it's Mantis C. It's either Mantis B or C. It's whichever of the two of them has the 4-person teleporter, so you can teleport 4 Mantis over simultaneously. Because then basically you can take loads of enemy ships through pirate actions, and if you do that you get loads more scrap and bonuses. So that's just great fun to do. So definitely whichever one that is, and I think it's C. John, a couple of months ago I asked you if your MATM background, i.e. the Galaxy background, was supposed to be a dragon. Turns out I was right, and they have indeed found a link to one of the original base pictures where it is flagged as Dragon Nebula. Though admittedly I'd need to kind of dig into that a little bit further, because I'm not sure whether that actually means like it's a nebula that's supposed to look like a dragon, or if actually that's literally the Dragon Head Nebula, which is the name of a nebula in our galaxy somewhere or other. So I'd have to look into that with a bit more detail before I knew for certain whether or not that was actually truly a dragon. But with that in mind, what's the dragon called? Terry. It's called Terry. John, do you have any subscribers in the Vatican? Well, let us indeed go and check. And indeed we do not. Or at least I can't see any. I can't see any. And if you don't, what country has the fewest subscribers? Now this is fun. I've noticed this before. The country with the smallest number of subscribers is the Central African Republic. Now, the reason for that, because there's loads of countries that have 0, like Chad and Turkmenistan and Kosovo all have 0 subscribers in them. However, there is a reason why Central African Republic has less subscribers than all those countries, and that's because the Central African Republic has -1 subscriber, which is, in the entire lifetime history of the channel, we have never had a subscriber be gained from the Central African Republic. However, we have lost a subscriber from the Central African Republic. I don't know how. YouTube's just had a bit of a error back end somehow. So as a result, according to my own analytics, over in the Central African Republic, we have -1 subscriber. So there you go. -1 is indeed the lowest number of subscribers going. What position in the Roman Senate would you have given the choice? I've put some thought into this before. Now, what I would be, I'd be a senatorial proconsul, because what they did was nothing important. Basically, in like the High Roman times, Roman provinces were divided into 2 in the imperial era. There was the imperial provinces, which were the ones at the edge of the empire. And the reason those were the imperial ones is because they were the borderlands, they were more dangerous, high risk of rebellion, high risk of invasion. So it's where the legions were. So the emperor decided he wanted to keep those under his control and put his hand-picked men in those areas. So as a result, the Senate didn't really get much of a say in that. Instead, there were the senatorial provinces, which basically were peaceful, minimal chance of invasion, minimal chance of rebellion. So as a result, there didn't need to be many troops there. So the Senate could basically appoint whoever they wanted to in those provinces. The Senate could just vote for senatorial proconsuls to go and manage them, because like there was no chance the Senate could build an army out of that, because there were basically no troops there, or rather just like, basic minimal police forces, nothing major at all. And because these couldn't be border provinces, they were generally like close by and nice and safe. So basically, if you were a senatorial proconsul, you just got told, hey, for the next year, just want to go to the south of France or Sicily and just basically sit in a great big house and have everyone do what you say. And they weren't expected to do anything. Like, they weren't sent with like, objectives like, hey, get the tax rate up. They basically were just sent over there just to keep an eye on things. In fact, actually, history records very often they were ludicrously corrupt, got really rich by just kind of, being just so corrupt and taking loads of bribes, brought back a giant pile of money to Rome, and if they got, like, taken to court for being horrendously corrupt, the issue used a small proportion of the money that they'd managed to extort to basically buy the way out of any form of trouble and just kept the remainder. I'm not saying I would do that. I'm just saying it seems like a nice, safe life to go to, like, the south of France and just chill out there for a year without anyone particularly expecting anything of you. It sounds pleasant. Knowing what you know now, what would you do differently in your Fallout You Only Live Once runs? Nothing, to be honest. I think they worked out really nicely, which is like, I think they were well planned, but there was also stuff I didn't know. But if they were overly well planned and everything just went like clockwork, they wouldn't have been interesting. I think they had the right level of tension, which is like, I had some really interesting ideas and I could show off some really fun stuff and ways to manipulate systems to your advantage. But also there were bits I didn't really know and bits where things went wrong. And I think that balance made them work. So I wouldn't change a thing about them, because I think actually I had that balance pretty much about right. You killed Chloe, John, says one person. You're going to be more specific than that. In the original Life is Strange playthrough, Chloe died repeatedly. I think Chloe literally died every episode. Like, in episode 1, she got shot by Nathan. In episode 2, she shot herself with the gun in the junkyard. Episode 3, was episode 3 or 4 where you euthanized her in the alternate universe? And then basically Chloe just dies over and over and flipping over again. Chloe never stops dying in Life is Strange. Would you consider playing Dark Souls or Bloodborne? I've already played Dark Souls. I strongly suggest you look it up. Honestly, I had a pretty good time with it, but maybe not enough to get back into it. I might do a one-off for Bloodborne at some point, but don't expect a full series. I was wondering if you have a favourite alcoholic drink. I recall you mentioned that you drank ouzo in Greece. Yes, and that was a mistake. It just tastes like licorice all sorts in alcoholic form. And I have drunk ouzo in Greece in the past, but I definitely prefer a Pimm's or a nice cocktail. A nice mojito or a Pimm's definitely suits me better. But if we're talking shots, Sambuca. Sambuca's great for shots. I love a Sambuca shot. John, what do you think about a Fallout Vault Dweller run where you can only use appropriate Vault gear or Vault weaponry? It's one of those ideas that comes up a little bit. Not that specific idea, but the sort of idea, which is loads of people give me ideas for Fallout runs. They're kind of fun, and they open up some interesting roleplay potential. But the thing is, you've got to balance that role-playing against, does it actually work as a series that's got to last for quite a few parts? Because Fallout is a long game. So ultimately, you'd need to have whatever it was as an idea could remain interesting and sustain a series for 20, 30, maybe more parts, depending on how challenging it is and how much you want to do in the game. Something like that would I think it would be a fun first or second part, but from part 3 onwards, it gets a bit uninteresting. It's the same reason that people sometimes suggest Fallout 4 literally no anything run. So you're only allowed to use your bare fists, you just go unarmed. And okay, fine, it's an interesting first part. You've got to talk about how you spec your character, and then you pick a few relevant perks, and then you put on the power armor frame, and you only equip the fists, because the fists give you bonus damage when you're punching. Or you could say, oh, you're allowed to use unarmed weaponry only, and then you kind of go for really fast bleeding stuff and stuff. But the thing is, after a while, it just isn't interesting anymore, because once you've seen a few different animations for punching someone in the face, I think it kind of, it loses interest. It's okay, but it's not great. And I think it doesn't have the legs to be a full series. I think that's kind of true for this as well, which is why some recommendations, though I think they'd be fun one-offs, don't ever make it into full series. Have you ever actually played D&D or any other IRL RPGs? No, not really, and I have been considering it. I have been considering using Tabletop Simulator to play an actual kind of traditional tabletop game. I've kind of been looking into it, but I'd need to put together a good team for it. An actual experienced game master who actually kind of, is good at guiding newbies through it. But it's certainly something I have considered. Wondering what sites in England you would think enjoyable to see or visit. I've been tasked with planning a honeymoon for April. Ooh, la-di-da. I personally, though I'm kind of biased, would say stay in the southeast, because London has a huge number of really good galleries and museums that are free, and also close by you've got Cambridge and Oxford, very accessible by train, which are really lovely historic towns. Or you could loop round to, kind of Windsor. Windsor's lovely, and that's kind of pretty close by, and you could get around there pretty easily as well. So I think kind of, doing a little kind of loop with a few days in London, then maybe some day trips to Oxford or Cambridge. Maybe not necessarily both, just kind of pick one. Both of them have their charms. I'm biased in favour of Oxford, obviously, but both of them definitely have their charms. And then maybe a day out towards Windsor, which is just a lovely area to just hang out for a day. It's really nice by the water, and obviously the good historic buildings around there and stuff. I'd say that kind of works pretty nicely. Another question about Fallout 4 You Only Live Once, where someone raises the issue that part of the joy of the previous Rolo runs was because they were so satisfying because of the purity of completing the vanilla game in an insane way the developers didn't intend. Of course, I've mentioned previously we have to slightly mod it. I agree with that. The problem is we kind of have no choice. Like, if we were just doing vanilla game, it would have to be on very hard. It could not be on survival because, plain and simple, no matter how careful you are or how, like, you know, you build a shelter and you build the right bed, there is a dice roll and you can end up sick when you wake up. If you get sick while sleeping and you pick up infection, the run is over. So basically, every time you sleep, and you have to sleep or eventually you'll just die from that, you are pretty much just committing to a chance the series will just end due to a random number generator. And that's not fun. That's not fun, and that never happened in the original 2 series, and I don't think it should happen here. Bear in mind, I will be very careful to remove the bare minimum amount of stuff possible and keep it as hardcore as possible too. Is there anything we can do to help boost your ad revenue from YouTube? If you're on Patreon, you're doing more than enough already. Like, in theory, if you were to literally sit in front of your computer watching YouTube and my videos and letting the ads run before every video constantly, would you be able to generate as much ad revenue as a single dollar on Patreon would represent? Oh, that's a really interesting question. Let's say my average video is about 40 minutes. Let's say, 40 odd minutes. So every 2 hours you can squeeze in 3 of them. So as a result, in the entire day you can squeeze in 36 videos, so 36 ads a day. So after that, you end up with, pretty much just over 1,000 ad views, assuming you always get an ad served, which you won't necessarily, but let's assume you do always get an ad served for the video and you watch it in full and you never skip. So you get about 1,000 ads in the entire month. Based on current ad rates on YouTube, yes, I suspect that's not actually worth $1. So yes, if you are literally anyone on Patreon, I think you are now at this point officially giving more than if you actually sat down and watched videos non-stop forever. So don't worry, you're doing enough. Can you please say the fizzy aluminium skeletal coyote is still around? Yes, I just did. Have I ever played Zoo Tycoon? No, I haven't, but as Rollercoaster Tycoon 2, when I did the little mini-series, did so well, I have actually thought about playing it, so expect to potentially see that one in the not too distant future. I'm starting a new job soon. I've only ever worked in corporate environments before. This will be my first job working from home. Do you have any tips for working from home? Keep up a good routine, like, don't let yourself get lax. Like, you know, every day, just as if you were working a traditional job somewhere else. Like, you know, I get up, I have a shower, I wash my hair, I properly get dressed and everything. Like, I don't do a pajama day. Like, I will always dress as if I'm dressing for work anyway, because I want to get myself in the right mindset. And I go out every day. I don't kind of just let myself become a hermit, because I know me, personality-wise, I could really easily become a hermit and just, like, never leave the house. So I'm very careful to, like, leave the house every day and properly stick to a routine of, you know, get up, shower, get dressed properly, sit down to work properly. Just kind of keeping those routines, I think, helps, and also means that you kind of can vaguely try and keep separate home life from work life, because you kind of go through routines to begin your workday and routines to end them, which can kind of help keep things a little bit separate. Will there ever be another chess stream? Possible. It went pretty well. It went actually better than I was expecting, but I don't know what I could really add now at this point. Like, you've kind of seen the chess stream. Generally, like, once I've shown off something, I don't like to do it again unless I can do something different. Like, say, FTL, I brought back so I could do a different ship, and if I bring it back again, it would be with a different ship again. So, I don't really know, to be honest. I'm just not really sure. Also, what long-distance relationship advice do you have that's different from the standard stuff? Ooh, that's a difficult question, because I don't even know what the standard stuff is, to be perfectly honest. I've had a couple of long-distance relationships in my life. To be honest, neither of them worked out particularly well. So, I'm afraid I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question, because if there is a secret, I clearly don't know it. If you were a Fallout 4 companion, what would your perk be? Ooh, I had an idea for this. Basically, if I'm travelling with you, then if you read a skill book or magazine or similar, it's 1% better than it would be otherwise. And if you've travelled around with me for longer and our relationship is better, that percentage goes up to a maximum of plus 5% additional. And that's 5%, not 5 percentage points. So, like, the Unstoppables doesn't go up from 1% chance to evade or damage up to, like, 6% chance. It goes up from 1% to 1.05% to avoid that being too broken. But it would help with an extra 10% damage, because ultimately an extra like 10.5 if you keep stacking multiple magazines on top of each other. At the end of the day, you are going to have a little bit of an increase. Maybe I should be more generous to myself. Maybe I should add a bit more. I think that works a little bit better in older Fallout, in theory, where actually, like, you know, a book, rather than giving you +1 or +2 or +3, could give you +2 or +3 or +4. Like, back in the days when there were actual skill numbers, that might have worked better. Maybe, like, I'm a Fallout 4 companion that works better in Fallout 3 or New Vegas. I'm not sure. If you could relive 1 year of your life with the knowledge you have now, which year would you choose and why? I always give the same answer to this, which is I wouldn't change anything. Because if you go back and change things, you might not end up in the same place. And I'm really happy with where I ended up now. So I wouldn't want to change anything, really. I mean, like, I've had bad times in my life, but I wouldn't want to go and, like, edit them out. Because going through that and learning from it and growing from it is part of what makes you the person you are. Like, even if you could, you shouldn't get rid of the bad times. The bad times are important in some ways because you can learn and grow and heal from them, and that's an important part of who you are. It's an important part of your strength and your will and all sorts of other things. So I'm afraid I wouldn't change a thing. There's absolutely times in my life where, you know, I look back and think it would be so tempting to kind of just go back and change that for the better, but you don't know what you're going to do to yourself back in the present. So rather than risking paradoxing M18 out of existence, I'm just going to leave it be, thanks. Do you have any plans to play Night in the Woods on the channel at any point? I've heard good things, but honestly it's not actually on my radar in terms of planning to be played soon, at the exact moment in time. It's one of those games I might have played if I'd kind of hit it right at launch, but I doubt it's going to happen like anytime soon now. Who would you rather have as a real-life friend in today's times between Benor, Julianus Vatinius, Spurius Scapula, Steve Stenger, and Bolslaw Herman? Okay, well, not Bolslaw Herman because he'd probably murder me, together with everyone else. Spurius Scapula, good guy, but when Julianus Vatinius is there, it couldn't possibly be him. So we're already down to Steve Stenger, Julianus Vatinius, Benor. We'll exclude Steve Stenger because he's got the weird thing that whenever he's in the room, everyone else starts having children immediately, which is just kind of odd. So let's exclude him as well. So we're down to Benor versus Julianus Vatinius. And the thing is, I wouldn't want to be in the same room as Julianus Vatinius because you just feel inadequate. So it has to be Benor, who also has the advantage that you know Benor would gladly sacrifice his life to protect you. So I guess Benor. How keen are you to avoid reusing episode titles? I like to try and do it when I can. The problem is, especially with Total War as time goes on, it gets harder and harder to come up with bridge puns, okay? When the centre of the episode is a bridge battle, we're kind of running out of bridge-related idioms at this point. So, at various times, sometimes some of them might get a bit reused. It doesn't really bother me that much. John, what were some of your favourite and least favourite subjects in school? Well, would you believe classics was always my favourite, which is why I went on to study at university. My least favourite was chemistry. Actually, my real least favourite was physics. I never got my head around physics. I just couldn't. I dropped it as early as I was able to, because in my school, you were able to drop a science if you kept the two others up. The three sciences that my school divided up being chemistry, physics, and biology. So, as long as I kept chemistry and biology, I was allowed to drop physics really early when I was about, I think, 14. Because in the UK system, we don't have like a baccalaureate system where you stay as a generalist. Basically, in the UK system, you specialise really early on, where you just pick the subjects you're good at, and you just focus on them, and you pick like 9 of them, or like actually it can be more. Loads of people do like 10 or even 12 GCSEs. I just did 9 because that was just the standard number that was the number when I was doing my GCSEs. And then you pick like 4 things to take on to A-level, or rather 3 and 4 to do up to when you're like 16 or 17, and then when you're 17 or 18 down to 3, then you pick one thing to do at university and just that one thing, so there's no idea of like major or minor. Actually, some degrees do have like 2 parts to them, but like my degree was pretty much entirely classics. So I was never keen on the sciences so much. I did enjoy learning them, it's just I could never quite get my head around them. Like in chemistry, valency always bamboozled me, and in physics I could just not get my head around some of the principles. So I just dropped the sciences. That's just something I was never quite good at. If you were to be added to a game, for example, the Curious Exhibition, I need to write to those guys. They actually wrote to me and offered to put me into the game. After I said the thing in the live stream, they did actually offer me. I need to get back to those guys. Oops. What would your archetype be? I need to think about what I would be, but I definitely want to take along, ideally maybe a dog and a cat. If I could just take a cat, actually, like a big cat, that'd be Tabby, and we'll take Claire along as a chef, because the cook character is a really, really good character to have early on. It's a really good way of getting sanity while you're out on the move. And also, you know, Claire is a little bit of a foodie, so that kind of works for us. If you could be whisked back in time to Rome or Athens, which would you prefer? Athens, it had the better theatre scene. Rome's theatre scene was okay, but definitely the cool stuff was happening in Athens. So I'll probably just go to the 5th century BC and be very boring and just go to the theatre festivals and enjoy all the classics being put on. Though bear in mind, yeah, as for other cool stuff happening in that period, yeah, also war, constant war that Athens didn't do that well in, so that might be a downside. Also occasional plagues. Maybe I'll take some antibiotics with me. Have you ever played any of the old school LucasArts adventure games? Honestly, not really. That was never really my thing. Like, in that vague point in history, I was more of a console gamer, and the stuff I did play on PC was like strategy stuff, like the original Roller Coaster Tycoon, for example. So I was never really into adventure games on PC. I never really played those when I was younger. So as a result, like, they don't really have like the nostalgia factor for me. So I don't know whether I'd give them a fair go. Maybe, like, at some point you'll see them as a one-off, but don't expect a full series. Will you sing Skater Boy for 300,000 subs? No, I will not, because 300,000 subs is going to be Let's Play Excel. We're going to be playing Microsoft Excel and doing some work on spreadsheets for 300,000. That's totally what's happening. Someone's flagged that apparently one of the DLC packs for Rome Total War 2, I suppose Rome 2 Total War to be precise, was set during the time of the Peloponnesian War. That's very cool. I did not actually know that. That's certainly something we'll take a look at some point. If you could choose a Fallout game's location, story, and character cameos, what would your choice be? I won't go into this in huge detail because I've discussed this a few times in the past, but I've always said I think a UK Fallout would be great because guns are extremely uncommon in the UK, and guns also have a very different cultural thing to them, which is if someone walks into town with a gun over their shoulder, that's not just a thing to be, you know, accepted. That's a thing that elicits a response of great fear, because we don't see people with guns. Guns are a source of fear, and it makes them very powerful. Gun is a very, very powerful thing because very few people actually have them. So I think like the ethos and how that would change, and the scarcity of ammo and the scarcity of weaponry, and how those who held the weaponry would be in an extremely strong and difficult to take down position, could create a really interesting basis upon which to build a Fallout, though maybe a DLC rather than a full game. Have you heard of Heroes of Might and Magic? Yes, quite a few times in fact. It's vaguely on my radar. It's vaguely on my radar, but I've never looked at it and thought, yes, that's something I absolutely must make a video out of, to be honest. It's something maybe there'll be a one-off, but don't expect it anytime soon. It's not one of the ones I'm kind of looking at and thinking, yes, I need to do that soon. Which stream has been your favourite so far? FTL. I absolutely loved the FTL stream I did on my birthday just because, oh, the double pipe beam and coming so close, getting to the final stage of the final boss, that was insane. That was so much fun. I was not expecting that at all, and that was just great. The community was really into it as well. That was just great fun. Do I have plans for after Solaris finishes? Yes, but that one I want to keep quiet for the time being. I will slowly trail that over the coming weeks, but it's a bit early for me to say what that is. But yes, I do have a plan for post-Solaris. John, why do you publish your videos late at night? Because it's not late at night for America. Basically, it's the best time that kind of works for everyone, which is like vaguely 8 PM to 10 o'clock and sort of 11 o'clock UK time means it's probably just about okay for people in Europe to still be watching it, albeit maybe a little bit late if it slips to 11 PM, which is why I tend to go for 10 PM UK. I know that's 11 PM in like Germany, for example, so sorry about that. I know that's a bit late for you. But also that's the time when the US people are just kind of getting home from work or school or whatever. So it kind of works for our biggest areas, because Canada and the UK and the US are our 3 biggest territories. So it kind of needs to work for all of them. And like a video often, like if it's going to rank somewhere on YouTube, and if something ranks on YouTube, it can get you a load of new subscribers and a load of new viewers in. Like if it needs to rank well, then it needs to get a big burst of views immediately the moment it comes out, because YouTube watches for that sort of thing. So basically pushing out videos at the exact moment when it's going to be convenient for Canada, US and UK, and also pretty much for large parts of Europe too, is pretty important, which is why we kind of put the videos out at about that time. Have I tried Victorio? No. Wait, hang on, no, that's a lie. I have played it very briefly once, and it kind of scrambled my brain a bit. I didn't quite get it. I didn't quite get my head around it, and I don't think I could make a great video out of it, to be honest, I'm afraid. What is my favourite type of egg? Scrambled. Love scrambled eggs. Scrambled eggs are great. You need to get some dynamite in Red Dead Redemption. Don't worry, on a part I've already recorded but isn't quite out yet, I think it's... No, it's not quite out yet. We do actually get the dynamite showing up, so don't worry, the dynamite is coming. John, do you recommend any historical documentaries? I'm massively interested in all of history. I think I've watched a large proportion of them. Oh, I probably wouldn't be able to recommend you anything you haven't seen then. To be honest, I'm actually more into nature documentaries than historical ones. Like, if I want to sit down to a documentary, I do like either current affairs or nature. But that's possibly just because I'm British and therefore we have David Attenborough. So it's kind of built into our national DNA that we like watching David Attenborough documentaries about nature. Oh, Planet Earth 2 was so bloody good, though. Would you be interested in taking a look at the, oh, I'm going to mispronounce this, Suikoden? I don't know how you pronounce that, sorry. Would I be interested in taking a look at that? Like any RPG, yes, I'm always interested in looking at an RPG, especially as you kind of vaguely said it was a bit like Skies of Arcadia-y. The problem is, very old, slightly more obscure RPGs that aren't like hugely well-known and well-regarded. I'm not saying it's not good, I'm not saying it's not one, I'm just saying it's not like the absolute top tier of classic games that everyone knows and remembers and kind of, you know, immediately associates with that period of gaming. The thing is, slightly obscure older games, people very often aren't so interested in them. And so I'd kind of probably just be playing that for my own benefit. And I don't play many games for my own benefit. Like, just about every game I play now is recorded. So I might give it a look at some point, but I don't know if it would make a good video or series or anything. So I can't really be too far up my priorities. The whole YouTube thing keeps me pretty busy indeed. So as a result of that, I don't know when I'm really going to have time to get around to that. Sorry. Hey, will Total War return to 3 days or more a week? No. I'm happy with 2. I think 3 was a bit too much. We went through that series a bit too quickly. I'm happy with 2 episodes a week. When I want a series to progress a bit faster, I'm happy with 2. I think 3 was too much for Total War. I'm much preferring the pace of Medieval 2. Any thoughts on Fallout 4 special allocation when You're in Live Once comes around? Haven't decided for certain yet, but you're certainly right that endurance will probably be a little bit higher. Though actually the thing is, you can just boost endurance up a little bit down the line. So potentially I might just do that, because in Fallout 4, if I remember correctly, endurance, if you boost it, retroactively boosts your maximum hit points. So you don't lose anything by having low endurance at the starting point. Then if I was to run into trouble, I could just start boosting it as time went by. So potentially it might actually be the case that I'd prioritise more important things for getting a hold of important skills early, like perception and agility and luck, and then actually boost endurance over the course of the run. That's possible, certainly. When was the last time you've been to the US? Have I actually been since I worked there in Los Angeles? No, I'm not sure I have. I think the last time I was there, in fact, several times in a row I was there, it was because I was working in Los Angeles. And also I nip up to Seattle because I know people in Seattle. So mostly my time in the US is spent in Los Angeles and Seattle. I've never been to Texas, which was the follow-up question. So I must have ridden a horse when I was a kid, but I can't remember it now. And I've never fired a gun in my life, and to be honest, I've never really wanted to. It strikes me as loud and scary. Have you ever heard of the game Kingdom Come Deliverance? Yes! Yes, actually. I'm pretty sure I might already have review code for it, actually. It rings a bell. I'm not sure if I already have review code for it, like an early preview build. I can't remember. I might do, but then you also just said it was a do-it-your-own-way story-driven RPG, which doesn't sound like the game I'm thinking of, so probably I don't. I think I know the game you're talking about, and if it is the game I think you're talking about, yes, we do want to give it a look when it comes out. Will you play the Fallout board game on the channel? Yes, abso-flipping-lutely. We'll find a way to make that work. This may sound weird, because I know John singing after the stream is totally not a thing. You're right, it's not. But if it were, I'd love to hear Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus. I've no idea what that sounds like. I need to bloody look it up myself first. You're overestimating how young and cool I am. Question about Endless Legend. Fun fact, when I got to, what was it called? Was it Endless Space 2? Endless Space 2 was that sci-fi thing I played on channel ages ago. Basically, I got code for that at the same time. They also gave me code for Endless Legend. So I have review code for Endless Legend. I just haven't played it. So I will get round to it at some point, but I do actually have code for that already. Any plans for a Genopoly stream or video? For those of you who don't know, some of the guys in the Discord actually made a really cool Many a True Nerd and John themed Monopoly set, which was really, really awesome, which they showed me on my birthday, which is very, very sweet indeed. I wasn't actually planning to make this stream, and the reason for that is Monopoly is not necessarily the best game for a stream, I don't think, because Monopoly is quite a long game, and there's a lot of it that's kind of up to random chance, and I don't know if it would actually work as a video or a stream. I'm not 100% sure. I'll give it some thought, though. I will give it some thought. I think it would be quite cute to make a video out of it. That would definitely be cute. So I'll give a thought to see if I can kind of come up with a way it might work. If Nintendo magically pulled their heads out of their backsides tomorrow and removed their content creator restrictions, what would you want to hit first? Ooh, probably Pokemon. You'd probably get a Pokemon series immediately. Some form of, like, stupid Pokemon challenge run. Because I know the early games in the series, like, everything up to the 4th gen, I know really well. Someone is going to be having surgery and thus in bed for a couple of weeks. Any game recommendations? And they like Fire Emblem. Ooh, if you've never played it, and if you've got like an old DS of some description that can still play the old games, Advance Wars. Advance Wars 1 and Advance Wars 2. Maybe Dual Strike if you really like Advance Wars 1 and 2, but that one's skippable. And definitely not Days of Ruin or Dark Conflict, depending on what country you're in, because that game's terrible. But Advance Wars 1 and 2 on the GBA are amazing. With the updated Age of Empire coming out, are you going to put that into the rotation? I'll need to play the original Age of Empire first. I never played that. It was never my thing. But I might go back and play. I think I've heard Age of Empire 2 is very often considered like the best of the classics. So I might go and have a little look-see at that, but I'll need to go and play the original first, because I don't even know whether it's something I'm excited by, because I never played the original. Recommendation for the racing game Split Second. Ah, yes, I know about this. I have been meaning to look at it at some point. Honestly, it's kind of in terms of like racing game. I want to look at Burnout Paradise first, which is not quite the same, but vaguely similar-ish. So in terms of racing games, expect Burnout Paradise at some point. I might look at Split Second after that point, depending on how that goes. Because I don't really know how racing games go down. We don't really cover many of them on the channel. Some of us asked for your Fallout saves. Oh, blimey, when was that? That was back in March. Oh, remind me which Fallout saves you wanted. I'll try and dig them out for you. And also a request for Overwatch. As I said, like, at some point, I think Overwatch will happen. Just kind of, I casually play Overwatch, like, occasionally. I don't know whether that will be Xbox One or PC, because I own it for both. But that may well happen at some point, yes. On the last Patroncast, you mentioned you don't watch Game of Thrones. Why? Because it feels like there's a lot to catch up on. Like, any time when I'm told there's 7 flipping seasons to catch up on something, I just can't be bothered to begin, because I've got too much I want to begin. I don't have that much free time, because this whole business keeps me quite busy. Like, what I'm watching right now is Gotham. We just got Gotham Season 3 in the UK, because I watched Gotham Season 1 and 2, and it was on Channel 5 in the UK. We've just got Season 3 in the UK because it's on Netflix, so now I'm kind of watching like an episode or 2 of that an evening, which I'm finding very relaxing. Oh, Gotham's so good. But what do you mean it's terrible, and everyone chews the scenery, and everyone's so over the top, but I love it because it's so hammy and over the top. How serious were you when you talked about doing an Excel video? Deadly flipping serious. Okay, seriously, 300,000 subscribers, Excel video, it's happening. Which of our modern superheroes would work the best in ancient Roman times? Well, they'd all be pretty good, because back in those days, people were smaller and weaker and, you know, just generally less healthy due to poor nutrition. So any of our superheroes that work pretty well in these eras would work much better back then too. I will say, Aquaman gets to go up the rankings a bit, because in a world where, you know, sea naval warfare and transporting troops by sea and transporting food by sea was essential, like Aquaman, if he just decides, no, I've decided the grain boats from the east of the Empire don't reach Rome anymore due to, you know, bad seas. As a result, actually wait, can Aquaman actually control the tides and the waves? He controls sea creatures. Can he control the waves? If he can, Aquaman's significantly more powerful. Aquaman would actually be pretty bloody important. I was curious what your audio setup is. Remarkably simple. My microphone is a Blue Yeti, which has kind of like a little built-in pop filter thing. So back when I used the Snowball, I had like a pop filter that I just set up in front of it. But pretty much I just use a Blue Yeti mic, and what I do is I kind of... I have a little stand behind it that I just kind of drape a towel over, so there's kind of just something behind it to kind of reduce the echo slightly. What you're hearing right now is basically I record in one of 2 positions. This is probably my worst of my 2 positions, the one I want to change at some point, which is if I'm playing something with a controller, I'll be over behind me on a chair in front of a TV, where I think there's slightly less echo and the sound's a little bit warmer. Where I am right now is I'm sitting in front of my computer, which is in the corner of a room. So even though I've kind of got a little kind of bit of stuff set up behind the microphone, there's a tiny bit of reverb. So if I'm ever using a keyboard and mouse, the audio quality is probably a tiny bit lower because there's a tiny bit of reverb you won't get if I'm sitting in front of the TV. I think it sounds fine in either case, but it's something I do want to fix up. But that's pretty much it. It's a very simple audio setup. What is my least favourite Pokemon? Beautifly. Beautifly is pointless. Actually, no. Okay, pretty much whatever the generation after the first generation introduced as the bug flying type that's just a variation of a bug. Like, and they were all terrible. They were so bad. Legion is so awful. It's catastrophically awful. And then Beautifly got brought in. What was the point of Beautifly? Why couldn't they just have used Butterfree again? There was nothing wrong with Butterfree. In all fairness, I think the design looks better. Beautifly looks over-designed. It's got its stupid little pointy, snouty thing, whatever it is, I don't know. But yeah, just use Butterfree again. Why are there all these stupid bug flying types that do nothing? Just reuse the better looking Pokemon you've already got. I hate Legend and Beautifly so much. Now here's a good idea. Have you ever considered actually streaming 60 seconds to see if you can win it? Because yeah, 60 seconds always did do well, and I never actually won a game of it. That's actually a good idea. I might do that. Well done. Coaster news. We're working on it now. We're working on coasters now. There is a plan for coasters. We are literally discussing it. We're trying to source a good kind of person who can make us those coasters right now. Have you ever watched Shoddycast's Fallout Storyteller series? I've seen some of it. And if so, what did you think of it? I don't want to say I'm not a fan, because that sounds really dickish. Because I don't want to, like, you know, cast shade on other Fallout people who are YouTubers. Like, I'm not saying it's bad. I just, like, it's not something I looked at and, like, desperately thought, yes, this is amazing, I must watch all of this. Like, it's fine. Some of it's very, very good indeed. Like, some of the lore stuff I like a little bit better too. Like, there's some really good lore videos floating around related to Fallout. Some of them are really well, nicely put together. The thing is, like, because I play quite a lot of Fallout, I don't necessarily always want to watch other people playing Fallout. Like, I get enough Fallout out of the Fallout I play, so I don't necessarily want to watch other people doing stuff with Fallout. Like, I think, like, there's some really good stuff. There's some really nice ideas in the Shoddycast Fallout Storyteller series. It's just not necessarily something I would choose to watch religiously. That's not to in any way say that it's not good. It's just not for me. Bananas or apples? Apples. Definitely apples. Like apples. Neither me nor Claire really like bananas. John, is the Stalker miniseries, which was promised along with The Witcher, well, it kind of was, coming along soon. Yes, Stalker, like with XCOM, and like with, it's kind of in the list of stuff I want to start doing as like a little midweek miniseries for a popular, well-known, slightly older game that's considered a bit of a classic. So yes, Stalker would actually be considered fairly high up on that list. What's my favourite board or card game? Galaxy Trucker. Galaxy Trucker's amazing. Just got into a new uni, and to pass the first year I have to make a video game. Would you like an MHN Easter egg put in? Actually, you know what? Go ahead. Go right ahead. Because there is actually already an MHN Easter egg somewhere in Atom RPG. Because we gave those guys some quite a bit of exposure back when that was doing its rounds on Kickstarter. So there is going to be somewhere in that game they're going to slap a little bit of graffiti just reading The Great Britant Lives is going to be somewhere in that game. I look forward to looking for that. So go ahead, slap that now. I just want The Britant Lives or The Great Britant Lives to be in as many games as possible. I just want it to be like, you know, something that terrifies future video game archaeologists in the future. Why was this in so many games? Admittedly, like so far, one. In fact, probably not even in there yet. But one day it'll be in more. Any plans to do a video on Rock of Ages or Rock of Ages 2? Now, this is really interesting, which is I personally don't think comedy games or kind of comedy-ish games make great videos. Because, like, I kind of need the game to be the straight man that I'm commentating over. If the game itself is trying to be a comedian, then that kind of puts me in an awkward position where you're kind of trying to gently poke fun at something that's already poking fun at itself, and it's poking fun at its own ridiculousness, so I just don't think it works. That's why I've never really done a comedy game in the history of the channel. I personally don't think it works that well. Is there any plan for the original Dishonored DLCs for Death of the Outsider? No, I'm going to do Death of the Outsider when it comes out, but there's no plan to rush the original Dishonored DLCs. Honestly, I don't think it really adds much or really does much. Like, I've heard good things. I know that the good things have been said about them, but I don't think, like, there's any reason to rush them before Death of the Outsider. I have a question for American John. Would you consider doing a full video for the channel? I literally can't. Like, after about literally, like, it's not a joke. At the beginning of the Red Dead Redemption videos, when I do American John, I basically, like, I keep doing American John until I hit a word I don't know how to do in American anymore. And it normally happens in 20 to 30 seconds. So, I don't think that would really be workable. If you could take any perk from any Fallout game and apply it to yourself, what would it be? I recommend not choosing nuclear normally. I'm just going to take science from Fallout 4 because the ability to basically take like a pile of screws and some duct tape and like use it to make a plasma rifle strikes me as really, really hyper-intelligent stuff going on there. That strikes me as useful. Who would John and Claire be if they were in the Harry Potter books? Fun thing. There's a little personality test you can do, Myers-Briggs. I personally like Myers-Briggs. Some people don't. But someone did Claire and I have both done it, by the way. We've both done Myers-Briggs. And someone also did a grid of characters associating Harry Potter characters with Myers-Briggs characters, which I thought was quite fun, especially as I like the results that, according to that, I got to be Hermione Granger and Claire got to be the Weasley twins, which I thought was pretty good from my point of view. NaNoWriMo readings, like I mentioned, sorry, I completely forgot, and I don't have any of the flipping text documents with me. I will try and get them for next month. I will read you a sample of something next month. Have you ever played the board game Talisman? Oh, that rings a bell. I think we might have done with a friend of ours at some point. Hang on, I need to look it up online. No, that's not what I thought it was. We have not played Talisman the board game, and we're not going to, because we've got enough board games and we definitely don't need to buy any more. Seriously, we've got way too many board games. Recommendation for Plague Incorporated. I know all about it, I just never really got round to it. And now I'm not sure, I could do it as a one-off. Yeah, that might make a nice one-off at some point. Expect that maybe as a one-off at some point or other. John, you mentioned Gone Home in your Tacoma videos. I can't find it in your channel. Yeah, fun fact, actually. I played Gone Home. I can't remember why I didn't record it. I just didn't. I just played it for myself. It's one of very few games I just played for myself. So, magnificent game, but no, I never recorded it. What's my favourite fast food or restaurant? You know what I really, really, really flipping like? Lebanese food. I just really like Lebanese food. I don't know why. Lebanese food is the best. Someone suggesting a possible basis for New Vegas 2 could be taking, Raider or Legion attacks from Fallout New Vegas and mixing in the trains from Red Dead Redemption. Ooh, working trains. I always said working trains would make Fallout New Vegas better. It'd be lovely if the trains actually worked. Yeah, you know what? If there was ever a New Vegas 2, it would need trains that worked. I like trains that work. How do you feel about the low perception comments? I may have commented this before, I can't remember. The thing is, when someone makes a joke or repeats a long-running joke, as far as they're concerned, they personally might have only said it once every 2 months, say. And for them, they just think they're making a reference and it's fine. But yeah, you're right, I'm not angry or annoyed or anything at anyone for the fact it comes up a lot. I think it comes up a bit too much and it's slightly annoying. But that's only because I have to deal with every single time it comes up from various different people. So I get it a lot, but each individual person doing it isn't really doing it maliciously or anything. So, it's a thing that happens with every YouTuber. Anytime I've discussed it with another YouTuber, it happens a lot, which is the in-jokes often end up going too far. And I try and get around that by, I try and stop in-jokes from just kind of going around forever. I try and refresh them in some way. I try not to just kind of wallow in the same thing forever. So, for example, during Rome Total War, there were all the general accounts. And, when we went over to Medieval 2, all general accounts moved over too. But the joke was a bit more strained, so I didn't engage with them as much. And, plenty of them started dying off because I didn't want it to just become a thing that would always show up just because they were a thing that always showed up. And that's also the reason why, we didn't we didn't rush to kill everything in Fallout 4, for example, that we could have done in many ways. In many ways, No Guns was kill everything in all but name. By the end of it, it was effectively role-playing in a role that was very similar to kill everything. And, I could have, with some very slight tweaks and just a bit more comprehensive murder, that series could have been kill everything. And maybe it should have been, but then should is a difficult way to put it. But, it was interesting. And, there were elements by the end of, Fallout 4 Survival, there were parts of that were very kill everything in ethos. By the end, when we got into the role-playing a lot, that was kind of very kill everything-y. So, I try not to take things that have already existed and do them over and over. I refreshed the bear is still around in Skyrim, which I was fine with, and I don't think that ever went too far. I think in some ways the Benor thing kind of got a little bit OTT. Benor comes up in all the other videos now, so we'll see about that. And it's just an interesting thing. No one really kind of means any harm. But you're right, it's not a bad thing, it's just an inevitable thing about doing this sort of thing online, which is sometimes the old jokes maybe go a bit too far and stick around for too long. But if they do, I just kind of gently try to move on to new things and keep doing new things to create new stuff. We know Fallout 4 YOLO is going to be tough. How about a real challenge and doing it in Fallout 4 VR? Oh, no. Fallout 4 VR is going to be really interesting as to whether it's even going to be a full series, because VR is really interesting, because VR is an amazing experience to be in, but it doesn't always translate well to YouTube. And because just of like the head bob and the fact that it's much more like, I probably react to what you perceive as being excessively dramatically, because for me it's fitting my whole vision. Like, the things in front of me look massive and they're huge, and it's really terrifying sometimes. But for you, you're still seeing it like it's YouTube video, just with slightly more obnoxious, jerky head movements. So I'm not sure VR always works great for big, open, exciting games like that. So we'll definitely be doing some Fallout 4 VR, but I don't even think it'll necessarily be a full series. It might just be like a series of features. I've kind of got something in mind for Fallout 4 VR that's a little bit different, so we'll see about that. And, merch idea, t-shirt just with Where's Benor on it. Benor is the intellectual property of Bethesda, and thus he cannot appear on any merchandising. John in June, you asked me to remind you of your promise that you would definitely start playing the Witcher series. Ha! Ha 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 ha! No, screw you, it's happened now. It's actually happened. Ha! Where do you see Britain 1 year after the Brexit vote? Well, technically, we're already like a year after the Brexit vote. I assume you mean 1 year after Brexit's completed and 1 year after we've actually left. It's really difficult to say. It's very difficult to say. I think we'll be a diminished country. We will be a country that is less outward looking, less open, almost certainly poorer in various ways, poorer monetary and otherwise. I think we will be a lessened country. I think it's very, very sad culturally. It's not enough right now that like I'm actively making plans to leave the country, but like I foresee a scenario where if the forces and ideas that led Britain to where it is now continue to get stronger, if this kind of, slightly jingoistic, nasty Little Englander, Little Islander thing gets stronger, I see a scenario where I would consider whether there would be better options elsewhere. I would totally look at it and consider it. If Scotland went independent, that would totally be something to consider. Eire is just over the water from us, so we've got a nation right there, many European countries, Commonwealth nations, Canada and Australia. Honestly, I probably wouldn't want to ever go and live in the US. There's too much that's culturally alien to me there, particularly around guns and healthcare. I think a lot of people who have lived their whole lives in social democracies in Europe would struggle to deal with living in America. There's too much that's alien to us in that regard. But there's certainly a possibility if things all go as bad as they well could do, that we might start considering if there were other options, potentially. I don't know how likely that is, though. And a recommendation for Claire, because people are determined that Claire is going to read the Witcher books, damn it. Short stories, books named The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny. Claire, those are recommendations for you if you want to give The Witcher another go. John, you've been suggested a lot of games by your viewers by now. Any chance you'll do a live stream at some point, trying them out, playing each game 15 to 30 minutes before moving on to the next? Oh, no. One, that's technically really fiddly, because constantly changing over between multiple games and then switching over and making sure they all stream correctly. Setup for a game on a stream can sometimes be a little bit fiddly, full stop. Constantly switching every 15 minutes would be a disaster. Plus, that doesn't really work with how I look at games. Sometimes if I see a YouTuber who plays a game I know, and they've played clearly just the first 30 minutes, and they've used that to make pretty much a 30-minute video because there's very little cut out, I often think that's not fair. That's not a fair representation. You haven't played enough of that to come to an honest opinion. Any video you see of mine will be if it's a one-off, absolute bare minimum, it'll be 90 minutes, say. More likely 2 hours, sometimes up to 3 hours of footage. Even if it's cut down to 40 minutes, there will have been way more footage there, because I'm very strongly of the opinion that you should not judge a game on just the first 15 minutes, say. Absolutely, there's a counter argument saying if you play for 2 hours and you're really not having a good time, then the argument "don't worry, it gets better" rings a bit hollow. Because, okay, but why am I not having a better time in the first few hours? If a game cannot be fun for the first 5 hours, then that game's got a real problem with its opening. And I've heard that a lot. What was it that was... Oh, yeah, this came up a lot when I was playing Undertale. When I gave Undertale a go, and I just didn't... I didn't really get Undertale. And like, no matter how much I know, I played a part and was, oh, just keep playing, it gets really good next. And then I like played like another part, still wasn't enjoying. Oh no, keep going, it gets good next bit. Played another part, still wasn't enjoying. No, keep going. The very next bit's definitely this next bit. You're going to start enjoying it. It's like, no, I'm not. Because the core gameplay is bullet hell and I don't like bullet hell games. This is a good story and the soundtrack's phenomenal, but this is not a game I'm enjoying, sorry. So I just stopped. And yeah, so the idea of something kind of, oh, don't worry, it gets better in a bit rings hollow. But on the other hand, you do need to play a game enough to give it a chance, and 15 to 30 minutes is not enough. So that's just completely anathema to how I play games, unfortunately. So that's not something I choose to do. What does Claire do for you on the channel that you never give her credit for? Probably one thing you don't know about is Claire does a really good job going like through Steam and stuff like that, and actually like loads of like really interesting one-off quirky games that you see on the channel. I've never heard of them. It's Claire that's found them. Like the ones where I say, I've had my eye on this for a while, those are the ones I've found. Basically, if there's like a new one-off indie game or something that's a bit different and interesting, and I don't say that, that normally means it's because Claire found it and I had no idea about it. So Claire is the one that finds lots of really interesting games for the channel. John, have you ever considered trying professional wrestling? This has got to be a joke question heading to a punchline. No, it seems to be a real question. No. No, I haven't. And I never will. Sorry, that does not sound like my sort of thing. John, what do you think is the breaking point at which monetization becomes more trouble than it's worth and channels stop caring about being advertiser-friendly or content ID claims? I'm not at the point where I'm thinking about that yet, but absolutely. I mean, I've seen other channels on YouTube basically say, screw it, we're just going to stream more, or we're just going to say, screw it, we're not going to be advertiser-friendly, we're going to do whatever. You're absolutely right, and kind of like one of the things you've said, like, from the outside it looks like the channel of your size could probably run, say, a Pokemon Patreon drive and make more money from donations than the ad revenue lost to Nintendo. You're probably right. You're probably right, but Nintendo's a bit of a special case because that's one I kind of take a bit of a principled stand against because I want them to, at one point in the future, come round. Like, I don't want to get into that because I would rather not be in a position where basically it feels like we're constantly, like, rattling the tin for every individual new series. I think that would be going a bit too far. Like, as I said earlier, like, I like the balance we've got right now. I think we're in a good place at the minute, and we live in hope that maybe things will recover a little bit due to rising CPMs in September through to December, and by the end of that period, YouTube might have sorted themselves out. Hopefully, anyway. What are your thoughts? Please be detailed on Total War Rome 2. Okay, here are my detailed thoughts. I've not actually played... not played the damn thing. I own the damn thing. Never really put any time into it whatsoever. My time was always put into the more classic-y Total Wars, Rome and Medieval 2 and that sort of era. Then I skipped forward a bit and put a fair few hours into Total War Warhammer when that came out. And obviously I've been paying a lot of attention to Total War Warhammer 2 because I've been to 2 press events related to that. And absolutely you'll be getting a full series of that when it comes out. So I'm afraid you'll have to wait until I've actually played Rome 2 Total War in any detail whatsoever for me to actually get to that. But absolutely it will happen at some point, just purely because, Rome Total War was such a big deal for this channel. Absolutely Rome 2 Total War will happen. But before you get that, I'll probably just quietly play it a little bit for myself first, just to get to grips with the basics. Like, it will not be a big expert, here's how to be amazing at the game and break the game and screw over the AI run, like I kind of did with Rome Total War, the original. It will be much more of a, here's me, I know the basics, I've done some reading around it, I'm going to learn as I go and you get to contribute a bit more kind of series when that happens. John, are you planning to play Beyond Good and Evil? I probably will as a mini-series, like in the week before Beyond Good and Evil 2 comes out, which I think is not going to be for quite some time. But yeah, I'm vaguely thinking that that would probably be the best idea. I'll play a little bit of it ahead of 2. John, are you planning on making a cathedral in Medieval 2 Total War like you hinted at in the first episode? Yes, I was. Then I remembered that the amount of money you spend in a cathedral to slightly please the Pope, you could do that, or you could just give that money directly to the Pope as a bribe and get way more benefit out of it, which is why I've not really built any cathedrals. Pretty much I only want to go to abbeys just to get the Norse war clerics, and that's your lot. You've mentioned several times you have a backlog of videos that are used for emergencies, and they keep getting pushed back in favour of newer recordings. What's the oldest video you have in there? Fun fact, there's not anything that old in there because when Annotations died, I had to release all of the old ones that I've had. Oh, wait, no. No, there's still one. No, there is still one. Okay. The oldest one I've got is actually the only video remaining that's still got the old annotations on it. And that video is a little VR game. It's a little escape room VR game called Vacate the Room VR, which was recorded... Okay, it must have been recorded in late 2016, because the same session I recorded that was the same session that I recorded the boxing game that I can't remember the name of, that was my Boxing Day video for 2016. So it was recorded in the same session as that, so probably in November or December of 2016, that is the oldest video currently active. All the other old videos have already been released, and the rest of the backlog is more recent because it has to be the new style of end card thing that YouTube's got now. So there is only one original flipping video with annotations left, so whenever that goes up, it won't have annotations on it, so oops. John, about the streams that are published for those of us who can't see them live. Now, interesting question this. Basically, a stream, when it goes... Well, after I'm done with the stream and I stop recording, I immediately turn it to unlisted. Now, the reason is because at that point, YouTube needs to process it for a while, because otherwise, one, if it's longer than 4 hours, everything after the final 4 hours gets clipped off the front, and we very often run over 4 hours. And two, all of the resolutions don't show up yet, so it's kind of in low resolution mode. So basically, it's not a good viewing experience. So I put it into unlisted. And then I release it basically at such time as it becomes the second video for that day. So if, for example, on Monday, I'm just releasing one main video, I'll release the stream then to act as that day's second video. And the reason I do that is because I don't want too much stuff floating around simultaneously. I could, like, release it, say, immediately, but then, like, if it was immediately, then it would look really dodgy. Or otherwise, I'd basically have to, like, I'd have to sit up on Saturday night waiting for it to be done processing to release it at some point at a stupid hour that wouldn't work for Europeans. So that's not good. So then we'd be talking about Sunday. But on Sunday, we've already got Medieval 2 and Fallout New Vegas. And both of those tend to be long videos that are very popular. So if I release it then it'll just kind of, like, get a bit lost in the crush, because no one's going to want to watch it then, because they're going to want to watch the Medieval 2 and the Fallout. So then typically what I kind of say I want to do is I kind of try and release it on Monday if I can, and then basically I try and release it at like 7 PM UK time. Then people who want to sit down and watch it have plenty of time to watch like a fair bit of it, and then, like, you know, 2 or 3 hours later, the one-off main video for that day gets released. That's kind of my logic. Honestly, if you really, really, really want to kind of see it immediately, there's nothing to stop you just kind of copying and saving the link when the stream goes live, because the URL on which the actual live stream occurs is the exact same URL as the video will occur post live stream. So if you desperately want it that much, then it's there already. You can just kind of save it there. But the reason I kind of take it down and try and, like, hide it, if you like, is because it's going to be a really bad viewing experience if you just watch it straight after, because you will be missing, like, a certain amount of time off the front and the resolutions will be really low, which is why I kind of hold it off a little bit. But if you want to, then very often, as you say, it's fairly easy to get hold of the URL when it's floating around on, say, Reddit or Twitter or whatever, and it's fairly easy to get hold of. So that's why I do it. I am just trying to make it the best experience and stop it just kind of getting crushed underfoot and lost in the rush on Sunday. Do you ever notice a spike in viewership for videos that are related to ones you release? I.e., have you noticed a spike in your Life is Strange series after you release newer videos related to it? Not so much on older series. What you do notice is, like, after you release, like, a video, there's just a video, and then it kind of, you know, gets a spike immediately, then it tails off. If I release a part 2 the following day, the original video suddenly gets a bump, because people think, oh, that's a series, I didn't know that was going to be a series. Then they immediately watch the first one, because until they've watched the first one, they don't want to watch the second one, which I find quite fun. You sometimes see that a little bit. Like, I don't remember seeing any particular bump for the original Life is Strange when Before the Storm came out. I think there was a small one, but it was pretty modest, really. What are some of your favourite one-liners from videos? Pretty much if I like a one-liner, it makes it into an end card. Like, that's pretty much all the one-liners I like. I love all the one-liners that make it into the end cards. I love those so very, very much. So that's always a good way of telling. So anything that's in those, I like them. Any chance of a one-off stream at a time that isn't in the dead of night for Australia and New Zealand? For a short stream, I'm afraid not. Like I was saying above, it's kind of got to be working for Europe and America, and the streams I do at the weekend right now work for Europe and America. And unfortunately, Europe and America combined make up like 75% plus of the entire subscriber base of the channel, whereas Australia is like, I think it's about 8-9%. So Like, at one point I'll do a super long one, maybe I'll do like a big long charity stream or something, and then there will be plenty of it in there that is more convenient for Australia and New Zealand, but I am sorry, Aussies and Kiwis. Crusader Kings 2 gets its traditional mention. Yes, don't worry, Crusader Kings 2 will totally happen at some point. I'm not sure exactly what format, but it will totally 100% happen. What do you prioritise when building a ship in Galaxy Truck? Oh, Galaxy Truck, it's its own question. Basically, what I notice when people don't know the game so well is, like, if they turn over, like, a connecting piece, a blank piece, they put it back because they're not interested because they want to try and rush to get the, like, the lasers or the engines or whatever. If I find a connecting piece, I always slap it in. I always slap in a connecting piece because it's worth it just to kind of basically get a bit of space down and just build out a bigger ship faster, because you don't really want your ship filled up necessarily, and like you can often use those as edges around the edge of your ship, because people who rush for like cannons and engines will often find they've got all sorts of loose edges, whereas if you use like the connector pieces that have some smooth edges, you can just like smooth out the back of your ship. Having a smooth ship with no errors but slightly fewer engines, I find works pretty well when the inevitable attacks come in, because an attack can just so utterly cripple you, it's worth having that extra defense. So I basically say use connectors more intelligently. Have you considered looking at the Long Dark? Fun fact, it's literally installed on my computer. It's been planned for so long, I've just never got round to it. So absolutely, it's one of those things that could totally become a midweek miniseries. Like this new initiative I'm really pushing where I want to do like at least one a month for midweek miniseries. Like along with several others I've discussed during this Patroncast, that's totally one of the ones that should become that. John, did you ever finish What Remains of Edith Finch? I played a tiny bit more of it, but no, I did not finish it, I'm afraid. And generally a game, if it like... That game was good, but it wasn't great. It's not going to be in like my top 10 of the year or anything. Like, it was okay. But the problem is I have so many games I need to play just to keep the channel going. Like, I don't have the time to finish games that are just okay. So, I'm afraid that one never actually got finished. It's my birthday this month. I'd like to ask you a favour. Would you please wish me a happy birthday? Happy birthday, Sarah. Happy birthday. Could you please do The Last of Us? Ooh. At some point I might. I've never really been desperately interested in it, to be honest. I've never been desperately interested in it. And I did hear at one point the devs weren't so desperately keen, Naughty Dog, they weren't so desperately keen on YouTubers. I think they've come round a lot since then. At one point, they were actively opposed to YouTubers. I think they've come round a bit. So, at some point, I might look into it. But that's kind of the reason there's never been any Naughty Dog on the channel. Because at one point, historically, they were not keen on YouTubers. But I think they've come round a bit. So, maybe at some point, you'll get something of that nature. Yes, in fact, actually, Last of Us would be a good candidate for one of those midweek miniseries that I've been discussing. If, using a time machine, you brought an ancient Greek to the modern day, how do you think they'd react? Or what do you think would shock them the most? Actually, you know what? I hadn't thought about this. I saw this one earlier. I think this is actually a really interesting question, and I think what would actually shock them the most is simply the fact that Hellenic as an ethnicity was not particularly well recognised or acknowledged as superior. Because the thing about, when we talk about Greece is a modern concept, Greece is a modern country. For the ancient world, it's a bunch of city-states. What they share is not a nation or a government or borders. What they shared was a cultural, social, ethnic kind of outlook. And it was that they were Hellenic. They were Hellenic and everyone else in the world was barbarian. And you've got to imagine that. And we don't really know like how literally this was meant. But the Greeks, in some sense, saw themselves as literally the centre of the universe. They thought of an area at the Oracle of Delphi as the Omphalos. It means navel. Literally the navel of the universe. They thought that a little spot in Greece, a little shrine, was literally the centre point of the universe around which everything turned. They had a very Hellenocentric view of the universe. The world did not revolve around the sun, Helios, it revolved around Hellas. There's a pun in there somewhere that's terrible. So that's kind of how they viewed the universe, and it's kind of like, to put it in like a modern term, I suppose they saw themselves as having some form of manifest destiny, a manifest superiority. They were Hellas, and everything else in the world was barbarian. And that meant they were superior to everything else in the world. So, to kind of having gone from that mindset, where they saw themselves, so even if they argued with themselves, even if Spartans and Athenians and everything battered each other around the head with sticks, they still knew they were all Hellenic. And Hellenics together were better than everyone else. So, to be brought into the modern world where not only is Hellas no longer the centre of the universe, like the idea of Hellenic as not even just like not special, the idea of Hellenic being even that distinct. These days, like Greeks as a nationality are just part of a wider European thing. Most of the rest of the world probably wouldn't like acknowledge the idea of Greeks as like a unique ethnicity or in any way like. This is a hard thing to articulate, but you kind of see what I'm getting at here. I think what would shock them most is the idea that the world as they perceived it, the entire centre of the universe had shifted so much from what they thought it was. Because Greeks, we're pretty sure, had a really concrete idea that Greeks were just so eminently, clearly, demonstrably superior to everything else. For them to come into a world where there's such variety and there were different superpowers and Greece would be such a really tiny part of the world in many ways, I think that would possibly be the most shocking thing of all. Ooh, that's probably the most detailed answer I've given today. Marvellous. And the final one, if the cast of the Grand Tour had a fight to the death, who would win and what weapons would they use? Okay, well, let's assume they're all just driving cars that they've built themselves. So, logically, so Jeremy Clarkson would show up in the biggest, nastiest car with the biggest weapons covered in spikes, but it would also basically fall apart incredibly easily. Richard Hammond would show up in, like, the mid-tier one. It would be pretty well put together, a few weapons, but still fairly sensible. So as a result, I think, the slightest knock, Jeremy's will probably break down, and Hammond's will be, Hammond's will probably be okay for the most part. James may meanwhile show up in a nice, sensible Doom buggy, where there's kind of very few weapons, but it is fuel efficient and it's going to keep going. So I'd say Clarkson will just break down and be easy pickings, and then Hammond would kill May, because May doesn't actually have any weapons on his car. So I'd say Hammond, therefore. I'm going to say Hammond would win that fight to the death in the Doom arena in which they're fighting in their Doom cars. They should do that. Whenever they've decided they're done with the Grand Tour, that should be how they finish it, with Doom cars in a Doom arena. Yes, that'd be very, very good indeed. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that is every single question. I think that's, well, technically it's not 133 questions, because technically there's a lot of duplicates floating around, like, more than one person asks about XCOM, for example. So, as a result, it's not quite 133, but it's very, very close indeed. So, I will sign things off right there. That is going to be quite long. That should be, once it's edited down, there's a few little bits and pieces while I'm just looking stuff up to move out. That'll probably still be well over 2 hours. So, still quite a long Patroncast for you this month. Thank you all so very, very much for joining me for this particular Patroncast. And thank you very, very much for just being here full stop, because especially in this world of the adpocalypse and all the chaos and all of the YouTubers who are just saying, screw it, I'm just going to Twitch. Patreon is what pretty much keeps us going. I don't know what we'd do. I don't know what we'd be doing right now if it wasn't for Patreon. So thank you all so very, very much for being here. And I will see you at the Patroncast next week. And hopefully there might be a little bits and pieces floating around. I've actually, I think I've got a few codes to give away at some point. I swear I've got a few codes sitting around in my inbox. So maybe at some point this month I'll do a big code giveaway. We'll see about that. I'll dig around and see if I can find them, because I swear I've got a fair few codes to give away dotted around in my inbox. So we will see about that. But in the meantime, I've been John. This has been Many a True Nerd, and thank you all so very, very much for continuing to keep this whole madness going. Thank you very much, and goodbye.